"Is that a weapon, human?" But she was looking straight at my bulge. Her voice was a low growl, like gravel grinding on starship plating. A 7-foot-tall, turquoise-skinned Amazon with eyes the color of molten gold, and she was fixated on my goddamn pants. I had a useless, fried-out plasma pistol strapped to my thigh, but her gaze was a good foot lower. My ship, the stray dog, was a smoldering heap of scrap 50 yards behind me, buried nose first in a field of glowing blue crystals. My head throbbed. My ribs felt like a xylophone played by a gorilla. And now this. Lady, if that's the first thing you notice on a guy, you either need a new hobby, or I need to buy a lottery ticket. A smirk pulled at her lips, sharp and dangerous. She hefted the spear in her hand, its tip crackling with contained energy. Your species communicates with boasts about random chance? Primitive. Her long, straight black hair was pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles and predatory confidence. Markings like black circuitry snaked up her arms and neck, pulsing with a faint inner light. She took a step closer, the air crackling around her. The sheer presence of her was a physical force. I am Zilia of the Cathar. This is a proving ground. Your vessel has trespassed. By our law, its contents are forfeit. She gestured with her spear, not at the wreck, but at me. You are its contents. Hey, I'm the pilot, not cargo. I shot back, raising my hands in a placating gesture. Jax, just a humble scavenger. My nav computer had a disagreement with a micrometeoroid. I'll just collect my emergency pack and be on my way. Won't trouble you magnificent spear-wielding people again. Her golden eyes narrowed, scanning me from head to toe. The assessment was so intense it felt like I was being stripped bare by a high-powered scanner. You are soft, unscaled. Your scent is copper and desperation. She took another step, her height forcing me to crane my neck. But you are not weak. Your heart beats like a war drum. I didn't know whether to be flattered or terrified. I settled on a healthy mix of both. It's called anxiety, sweetheart. It's a pretty standard reaction to being threatened with shish kebab. She ignored my sarcasm, her attention snagged by the useless pistol on my thigh. With a movement too fast to track, she closed the distance, the butt of her spear cracking against my wrist. I yelped as the pistol clattered onto the crystalline ground. She kicked it away without a glance. "A toy!" she scoffed. Her hand, large and calloused, shot out and grabbed the front of my jacket, yanking me forward until we were nose to nose. Her scent was ozone, strange spices, and pure, undiluted female predator. Everything you are, everything you have, now belongs to my trial. Your life is a tool I may use or discard. Understand, soft thing. My own bravado, my only real weapon kicked in. I met her gaze, forcing a smirk. You say that to all the boys who crash land in your backyard? For a second, I thought she was going to drive her fist through my face. Instead, a slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips. It was the most terrifying thing I'd seen all day. No, only the ones whose scent promises a good hunt. She shoved me back, hard, sending me stumbling. Move. The razor storm comes. You will be my shelter or my bait. The choice will be mine. With that, she turned and strode toward a fissure in the glowing rock face, not even looking back to see if I was following. She knew I had no other choice. Fucking hell. This was not going to be a simple insurance claim. I was cargo after all. She didn't walk. She flowed. A predator moving through her natural element. I scrambled to keep up, my worn-out mag boot struggling for purchase on the slick crystalline ground. The cave system she led me into was a nightmare of beauty. Veins of glowing blue minerals pulsed in the walls like a living circulatory system, casting shifting shadows that danced and writhed. The air was thick with the smell of ionized rock and something else, something metallic and sharp. So what's the 5-star tour include? I panted, my ribs screaming with every step. A complimentary mauling? A meet and greet with the local apex predator? Zilia didn't break her stride. Your constant noise is an irritant. Are all humans so leaky with their thoughts? Only the charming ones, I said. It's how we procreate. We annoy the female of the species until she gives in just to shut us up. She stopped so abruptly I almost ran into her. She turned, her golden eyes flashing in the dim light. You wish to procreate with me, human Jax? Oh shit. That was, A joke. A cultural miscommunication. Humor. Humor, she repeated the word as if tasting it. A display of non-threatening weakness. We have no need for it. She dismissed the topic with a wave of her hand and resumed her relentless pace. The Cathar do not give in. We conquer. We take. Mating is a victory, not a negotiation. Sounds romantic, I muttered under my breath. The cave narrowed, forcing us closer. The heat rolling off her body was intense, a stark contrast to the cool, damp air. I could see the intricate black markings on her skin in more detail now. They weren't tattoos. They seemed to be part of her, shifting slightly, the faint light within them waxing and waning with her breathing. One particularly thick band was wrapped around her left bicep, scarred and jagged, as if it had been branded there. It glowed brighter than the rest. "What are those?" I asked, gesturing with my chin. "The glowy circuit board thing you've got going on." "They are the story of my bloodline, my deeds, my claims," she said, her voice tight with pride. "This," she touched the scarred band on her arm, "is my bond mark, a mark of a warrior on their first trial." "Your first trial? You look like you've been doing this for a while." "My path was interrupted," she said, her tone closing the door on any further questions. We continued in a tense silence, broken only by the drip of water and the crunch of our boots. The air began to vibrate, a low hum that resonated in my teeth. Zelia stopped, holding up a hand. She tilted her head, listening to something I couldn't hear. "The storm," she said. "It is here." The hum intensified into a high-pitched shriek that scraped at the inside of my skull. Through the mouth of the cave, I saw the sky turn from a dusky violet to a churning vortex of black and silver. "What the hell is that?" "Magnetic shards," she stated, pulling me deeper into a side passage. "They will strip the flesh from your bones." She shoved me into a small dark alcove, barely big enough for one person, let alone two. The entrance was a narrow slit, and she positioned herself in front of it, her spear held ready. The shrieking outside grew to a deafening roar. "So, you're on this first trial," I said, my voice raised over the din. "What exactly are you hunting?" Her gaze was fixed on the storm. "A void stalker, a creature of shadow and claw, born from the dark zones between stars. To kill one is to earn a name. And if you don't?" She finally looked at me, her expression grim. The light from the cave walls cast her face in sharp relief. "Then the stalker kills you, but my trial is now complicated." Her eyes dropped to my chest, then lower. "By law, anything that enters the proving grounds during a trial becomes part of it. A challenge, an obstacle, or a prize." My blood ran cold. "So you have to, what, fight me? I must prove my dominance over all things within my trial. I must kill the stalker and I must deal with you." Her gaze held mine, intense and unblinking. "The elders will demand I present the beast's heart and my claim. Right now, human Jax, you are my only claim." The storm raged for what felt like an eternity, a screaming wall of metallic death that turned the sky outside the fissure into a blender of silver and black. Inside our tiny pocket of rock, the space was shrinking. Or maybe it was just her presence filling it up. The air was thick with her scent, with the low thrum of her power. She stood like a statue, a sentinel guarding the gap, but I could see the tension in the lines of her shoulders. Even she respected the planet's fury. The silence between us stretched, no longer hostile, but something else. Something heavy with unspoken questions. I shifted, my back scraping against the rough wall. "So, the elders," I started, keeping my voice low. "They sound like a fun bunch." A faint, humorless smile touched her lips. "They are the anchors of our tradition. They ensure the Cathar remain strong. By sending their best and brightest out to get torn apart by, what did you call it, a void stalker? It is the only way. Strength is proven through trial, not given by birthright. It is why I am here. Why my bond mark is still..." She trailed off, touching the scarred marking on her arm. "Unfulfilled." For the first time, I saw a crack in the warrior's armor, a flicker of something that looked like frustration, or maybe even pain. It made her more real, less of a terrifying Amazon, and more of a person with shit to deal with, just like everyone else. "What happened?" I asked, my curiosity overriding my self-preservation instinct. The interruption to your path? She was silent for a long moment, the only sound the dying howl of the storm. There was another presence on the grounds during my first attempt. Not a beast. Something wrong. Unclean. Her hand tightened on her spear. They interfered. I was shamed. My trial was declared void. Who were they? Her golden eyes met mine, and they were hard as ancient amber. Outsiders, mercenaries. Their technology leaves scars on the land that do not heal. They seek to steal what is sacred, to poach our beasts, our minerals, our people. The word poach hung in the air, ugly and vile. Suddenly her hunt didn't seem like a simple rite of passage. It sounded like pest control. It sounded like revenge. The storm's shriek faded to a low moan and then silence. A heavy, wet calm settled over the land. Zelia relaxed her stance, peering out the fissure. It has passed. We move. As we emerged from the alcove, the world looked scoured clean. The blue crystals glittered, washed by the storm, but the ground was littered with razor-sharp metal filings. It was like walking through a field of tiny knives. We walked for an hour, deeper into the labyrinth of ravines. The trail she followed was invisible to me, but she moved with unerring purpose. Then she stopped, kneeling. I came up behind her. There, on the ground, was a footprint. A massive three-toed track sunk deep into the rock. It was fresh. Beside it, however, was something else. A scorch mark, perfectly circular, the kind a high-energy plasma discharge leaves. Not from her spear. This was from a rifle. "Mercs," I said. She nodded, her face a mask of cold fury. "They hunt my prey, a greater dishonor. They seek to steal my victory." "Or maybe," I said, my scavenger brain kicking into gear, "they're not hunting the stalker at all. Maybe they're hunting you." Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Why would they hunt me? I am an unblooded warrior on a trial. Maybe it's not about you being a warrior," I thought aloud, pointing at the scorch mark. "That's Xylonian tech. Top-shelf military grade. Expensive. You don't bring that kind of hardware to poach a single monster. You bring it for high-value extraction. Or assassination." The logic settled in, and I saw the realization dawn on her face, quickly replaced by a fresh wave of anger. The elders. Some of them resent my bloodline. They see my mother's compassion as a weakness infecting our future. She rose to her full height, her knuckles white on the shaft of her spear. They would not dare. "People dare all sorts of shit when they're scared of losing power," I said quietly. "Believe me, I know." Before she could answer, a sound echoed down the ravine. A low, guttural chuffing. It wasn't human. It wasn't Cathar. It was the sound of a predator that had just caught the scent of its dinner. Zelia's entire body went rigid. "It is here." She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Stay behind me, human. Try not to die. Your noise may yet prove useful as a distraction." Charming. Absolutely fucking charming. The Void Stalker was a ripple in the air, a distortion of shadow and malice that slid from a crevice in the rock wall. It had no discernible shape, just a writhing mass of black limbs tipped with bone-white claws and a collection of too many red gleaming eyes. A low growl rumbled from it, a sound that vibrated deep in my chest. Zelia stood her ground, planting the butt of her spear into the crystalline floor. The tip hissed, blazing with light. "This is my kill, Shadow Spawn," she roared, her voice echoing through the ravine. The stalker answered with a shriek and lunged, and at the exact same moment, plasma fire erupted from the cliffs above. Green bolts of energy slammed into the ground around us, kicking up shards of crystal. "Ambush!" I yelled, diving behind a rocky outcrop. Fucking knew it. Zelia was forced to pivot, her spear deflecting a plasma bolt that would have taken her head off. The Void Stalker used the distraction, lunging at her from the side. She spun, bringing her spear around in a glittering arc that sliced off one of the creature's shadowy limbs. It dissolved into black smoke with a high-pitched keen, but the mercs had her pinned. Two figures in sleek black armor were rappelling down the cliff face, firing as they came. A third was providing cover fire from above. Xylonian tech, just as I'd suspected. "I need to break their line of fire," Zelia yelled, parrying a savage blow from the stalker. I peeked over my cover. The merc on the cliff top was the biggest problem. He had the high ground and a heavy repeater. I scanned my surroundings, my emergency pack. I'd grabbed it from the wreck. I scrambled to open it, my fingers fumbling with the clips. Med kit, nutrient paste, water purifier. Ah, there. My little surprise. A salvaged, repurposed grav mine. Not powerful enough to do real damage, but it packed a hell of a kinetic punch. I armed it. "Hey, ugly!" I shouted at the merc above. He glanced down, saw me, and raised his rifle. Bad move. I chucked the mine like a frisbee. It wasn't a great throw, but it didn't need to be. It sailed past him and I hit the detonator. The mine didn't explode. It imploded, creating a small, localized gravity well. It yanked the merc sideways, right off his perch. He screamed as he tumbled down the cliff face, his armor clanging against the rock. One down. The two on the ground were now focused on me. "Bad idea, guys," I yelled, scrambling for better cover. Plasma bolts stitched the rock where my head had been seconds before. This freed up Zelia. With a furious battle cry, she went on the offensive. She was a whirlwind of turquoise skin and crackling energy. She dodged a swipe from the stalker, used its body as a springboard to launch herself at the nearest merc, and drove the butt of her spear into his helmet. The crack of plasti-steel and bone was sickening. The second merc raised his rifle, but the Void Stalker, enraged and wounded, slammed into him, its claws tearing through his armor like paper. Man and monster went down in a screaming, thrashing heap. It was over in seconds. Silence descended, broken only by my ragged breathing and the dying gurgle of the merc. Zelia stood in the center of the carnage, her chest heaving. Blood trickled from a cut on her cheek. The stalker was dissolving into a puddle of black ichor, and then I saw it. A deep gash on her leg, bleeding freely, and on my arm a long scrape from my dive behind the rocks was dripping blood onto the same patch of crystalline ground. Our blood, mingling in the dirt. Her eyes widened. The scarred bond mark on her bicep, the one she'd called unfulfilled, flared with a sudden violent light. It wasn't a soft pulse. It was a nova, a brilliant, blinding flash of gold that seared itself onto my retinas. She gasped, stumbling back, her spear clattering to the ground. She looked from our mingled blood on the ground to my face, her own a mask of pure shock. What have you done?" she breathed. Her voice wasn't angry. It was terrified. A strange energy arced between us, a current that made the hair on my arms stand up. I felt a bizarre echo in my own chest, a phantom pulse that mirrored the frantic beating of her heart. "I didn't do anything," I said, taking a step toward her. "Your mark just went supernova." She stared at me, her golden eyes wide with a dawning horror and something else, something I couldn't name. The blood, the trial by combat. You fought at my side. Her words were fragmented, her ritualistic certainty gone, replaced by raw confusion. The ancient texts, a bond forged not in dominance, but in shared blood and battle. It was a myth, a legend for children. She took a shaky step toward me, her hand reaching out not to strike, but as if to touch a ghost. "The trial," she whispered, her voice trembling with a terrifying new intensity. "It is not over. It has just begun." Her gaze was a physical weight, pinning me in place. The brilliant light from her bond mark subsided, but the air between us remained thick, charged with an energy that felt like the moment before a lightning strike. The dust of the battle settled, leaving only the three of us, me, her, and this terrifying invisible thing that now connected us. "The trial is now you," she said, her voice dropping to a low, guttural register I hadn't heard before. It was the sound of instinct taking over. "The old laws are clear. A bond forged in blood must be sealed in flesh. Here. Now." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Whoa, hang on. Sealed? What are you talking about? We just survived. Let's not get crazy." I took a step back, but she moved with me, a predator closing in. Her earlier shock had been burned away, replaced by a primal certainty. "This is beyond choice, human jacks. The magic of the bond has been invoked. It demands a conclusion, a ritual of dominance." She stalked toward me, her eyes locked on mine. The fury of the battle was still thrumming through her veins, but it was twisting into something else, something raw and hungry. One of us must submit. The bond must have an anchor, a victor. We were in a small circular cavern now, the site of the ambush. The glowing blue crystals in the walls cast an ethereal, almost sacred light on the scene. It felt like an arena. "This is insane," I said, my back hitting a cold rock wall. Nowhere left to run. "I'm not fighting you. You fought beside me," she countered, her voice a husky growl. She was so close I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "You shed your blood on my proving ground. You have already accepted the challenge. Now you will finish it." She lunged. There was no finesse to it, no warrior's grace. It was a raw, desperate tackle. She slammed into me, her strength immense, driving the air from my lungs. We crashed to the ground, a tangle of limbs on the cold, crystalline floor. I was a scavenger, a survivor. I knew how to fight dirty. As she tried to pin my arms, I twisted, using her own momentum to roll us over. For a split second, I was on top, straddling her hips. The look of pure shock on her face was worth the coming pain. It was the first time she hadn't been in complete control. Her surprise turned to rage. She bucked, her power immense, and threw me off. I landed hard, my head cracking against the ground. The world swam for a second. She was on me in an instant, one hand pinning my shoulder, the other grabbing a fistful of my jacket. "You resist?" she snarled, her face inches from mine. "You dare to challenge my claim? I'm not your fucking claim." I spat back, adrenaline and defiance surging through me. I bucked my hips, unbalancing her just enough to get a hand free. I didn't hit her. I grabbed the scarred bond mark on her arm. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. A jolt, hot and electric, shot up my arm. I felt a flash of her emotions. Fury, confusion, and underneath it all, a deep, aching loneliness and a desperate fear of failure. It was a shocking, intimate violation. Her grip slackened. Her golden eyes widened, the anger replaced by a vulnerable bewilderment. The fight went out of her, but the energy between us didn't vanish. It coiled tighter, changing its nature. The violence was melting into a desperate, frantic heat. Her breathing was ragged, her chest rising and falling against mine. My hand was still on her arm, and my thumb stroked over the scarred, raised flesh of the bond mark. A shudder went through her entire body. The raw, primal energy of the fight had nowhere to go. It curdled, thickened, and transformed. The hand she had fisted in my jacket didn't shove me away. It clenched, pulling me closer. Her other hand, which had been pinning my shoulder, slid up to the back of my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair. Her grip was still one of ownership, of control, but the intent had shifted entirely. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was a demand. My thumb was still stroking her bond mark, a steady, rhythmic pressure. Each pass sent a tremor through her. I could feel it through the psychic static that now connected us. Waves of her confusion, her arousal, her shock. She was a warrior, built for conquest, and she was being conquered by a sensation she had never been taught how to fight. Her head tilted back, her long black hair spilling onto the glowing crystalline floor. A low moan escaped her throat, a sound of pure, unwilling surrender. "What are you doing to me, human?" she whispered, her voice rough with a need she couldn't comprehend. "I'm not doing anything," I breathed back, my own body responding to the sheer intensity of the moment. This is the bond. It's not about who wins." I leaned down, my lips hovering just over hers. The scent of her was intoxicating. "It's about this." I closed the distance. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was a collision. A frantic, desperate claiming from both of us. Her lips were soft, a stark contrast to the raw power of her body. She responded with a fierce, hungry passion that stole my breath. It was a battle of tongues and teeth, a fight for dominance that had no winner, only a shared, escalating fire. Her hands were all over me, exploring, mapping, possessing. They slid under my jacket, her cool fingers branding my skin. "The Cathar," she'd said, "conquer and take." And she was trying to conquer me now, not with her spear, but with her body. But I wasn't a prize to be won. I met her ferocity with my own. My hands roamed down her powerful back, her waist, her hips. Her skin was smooth like polished stone, but warm and vibrantly alive. I hooked my leg around hers, leveraging myself, shifting our weight until I was pressed fully against her, slotting our bodies together. The friction of our clothes was an agony and a promise. From her point of view, The world dissolved into pure sensation. The human's touch on her bond mark was a key turning a lock she never knew existed. It bypassed her training, her discipline, her pride, and tapped directly into a well of raw, primal need. His scent, which she'd first registered as alien and desperate, now smelled of defiance, of survival, of a strength entirely different from her own. It was intoxicating. When he kissed her, it wasn't the submission of a conquered foe. It was the challenge of an equal. He didn't yield. He matched her, pushed back, took as much as he gave. The concept was so foreign, so thrilling, it shattered her reality. The ritual wasn't about one victor. The legend was true. It was about forging one whole from two halves. Clothing became an intolerable barrier. Fabric tore. With frantic, clumsy movements, we shed the layers between us. The cool air of the cavern hit my skin, but I was burning from the inside out. Her turquoise body, revealed in the ethereal blue light, was a masterpiece of muscle and grace. The black markings swirled over her powerful thighs and flat stomach, all of them pulsing with that soft inner light. She was beautiful and terrifying, and I wanted all of it. The fight for control ended in a mutual, desperate surrender to the inevitable. I entered her with a single, powerful thrust. She cried out, a sharp, wild sound that was part pain, part ecstasy. Her nails dug into my back, not to hurt, but to anchor herself. Her legs wrapped around my waist, locking me to her. It was possession. It was union. The rhythm we found was frantic, brutal, and perfect. It was the rhythm of the fight, the rhythm of survival. Every thrust was a question, every response an answer. Through the bond, I felt everything she felt. Her shock, her pleasure, the crumbling of a lifetime of belief. She was discovering that submission wasn't weakness, and that connection was a power greater than any physical strength. The climax built like a gathering storm. The light from her bond mark flared again, but this time it spread, igniting all the markings on her body. Her skin became a glowing map of her lineage, and I was at its center. As the end neared, a primal instinct I didn't know I possessed took over. My nails had been scraped raw on the rock, and my knuckles were bleeding. As she cried out my name, her body arching in a shattering orgasm, I reached up and drew a line of my own blood across the skin of her back. A mark, a claim, an echo of her own rituals. The bond between us snapped into place with the force of a physical blow. The world went white. The silence that followed was louder than the storm. My ragged breaths and hers, mingling in the cool air of the cavern. The ethereal blue light of the crystals seemed too bright, illuminating every detail of the aftermath. Our bodies were slick with sweat, tangled together on the floor. The blood on her back, my blood, was a stark, red sigil against her glowing turquoise skin. It wasn't a wound. It was a statement. I felt the shift a second before I could process it. The formless, static-filled connection between us sharpened into a clear, two-way channel. I felt the overwhelming wave of her climax receding, leaving behind a shore littered with the wreckage of her entire worldview. And she, I knew, could feel my own turbulent mix of adrenaline, awe, and a profound, bone-deep sense of, what the fuck did I just do? I pushed myself up onto my elbows, looking down at her. Her golden eyes were wide, staring at the cavern ceiling as if seeing it for the first time. The warrior's mask was gone, shattered. In its place was a raw, stunning vulnerability. "You marked me," she whispered. Her voice was hollow with disbelief. She could feel the mark on her back as if it were a brand of fire, a focal point for the bond that now sang between us. "Yeah, seemed like the thing to do," I said, my usual sarcasm feeling flimsy and inadequate. My heart was still pounding a frantic rhythm against her chest. "You were talking about victors and claims. Figured I'd put in a bid." She turned her head, her gaze locking with mine. There was no anger there, only a deep, soul-shaking confusion. Cathar males fight for the right to claim. They prove their strength, their dominance. The victor marks the vanquished. Her eyes searched my face. "You did not vanquish me. You met me, and then you marked me as an equal. The bond, it feels different," I supplied. "Wrong?" "No," she said, and the word was full of wonder. "Stable, balanced. The legends never spoke of balance." She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw. Her touch was hesitant, inquisitive. It was the first time she had touched me without the intent to control or subdue. It was a touch of pure curiosity. I leaned into it, a shudder running through me. The full implication of our new connection was dawning on me. I could feel her. Not just her surface emotions, but the deep currents beneath. Her pride, inextricably tangled with a profound loneliness. Her duty, warring with a newfound, terrifying freedom. It was intimate in a way that sex couldn't touch. It was terrifying. So what happens now? I asked quietly. Do the elders show up with a really awkward fruit basket? A shadow passed over her face. Reality came crashing back in. The elders, she said, sitting up. She pulled a piece of torn fabric to cover herself, her movements suddenly stiff. The warrior was reassembling her armor, piece by piece. They will feel the bonds sealing. They will come. They will expect me to present my prize. And I'm guessing equal partner in a mythical psychic marriage isn't on the official paperwork. They will see you as a contamination, she said, her voice turning hard. An outsider who has corrupted a sacred ritual. They will see your mark on me as a defilement. They will demand your life. Great, I muttered, running a hand through my messy hair. Just fucking great. And what about you? I have broken every tradition, she said, rising to her feet. She looked like a goddess carved from glowing stone, magnificent and troubled. By failing to dominate you, I have failed the trial. By allowing this balanced bond, I have committed heresy. They will strip me of my name, exile me, or execute me alongside you. The remaining mercs were still a threat. Her entire culture was now a threat. We weren't just two survivors anymore. We were fugitives, bound together by an act that had saved us and damned us in the same breath. The stakes hadn't just been raised, they'd been launched into orbit. She looked at me, her golden eyes blazing with a new, fierce light. It wasn't the light of a hunter anymore. It was the light of a protector. They will not have you, she said, her voice a low, dangerous promise. You are part of my bond. You are part of me. Anyone who tries to take you will face me. The emotional fallout settled into a grim, practical silence. The air still buzzed with our new, unnerving connection. But survival was a louder instinct than confusion. We gathered our clothes, the torn fabric a testament to the chaos that had just unfolded. Dressing felt strange, like trying to put a cage back on something that was now wild and free. The psychic link between us was a constant low hum in the back of my mind. It was less like hearing thoughts and more like feeling the shape of them. Her fear was a cold, sharp-edged thing. My anxiety was a frantic, buzzing swarm. But under it all, there was a new, shared current of fierce determination. The mercs, I said, breaking the silence. The one I knocked off the cliff might have survived. They'll have a camp, a comms unit. They'll call for backup. Zalia finished strapping on her vambraces, her movements economical and precise. Their dishonor must be purged from this land before the elders arrive. We must hunt them. We. The word hung in the air, solid and real. It wasn't her and her claim anymore. It was we. They came for you, I reasoned, my scavenger mind piecing it together. They used the stalker as a distraction. Someone in your city-state hired them to take you out during your trial. Make it look like an accident. I felt her anger spike through the bond, a hot, visceral flash of fury and betrayal. The faction of Elder Kresh. He believes my mother's diplomacy weakens us. He wants a return to the old ways of conquest. Nothing says old ways like hiring off-world assassins to murder your political rivals, I quipped. The corner of her mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile, but it was close. Your sarcasm is a strange comfort, human Jax. Just Jax is fine, I said. And I've got more than sarcasm. I started rummaging through the dead merc's gear. His rifle was fried, but his utility belt was a treasure trove. Data pad, spare energy cells, a signal jammer. We can use this. Find their camp by tracking the pad's local signal, and use the jammer to make sure they can't call Mommy for help. She watched me, a new kind of respect in her golden eyes. It wasn't for my fighting ability, but for my resourcefulness. The way my mind worked was as alien to her as her rituals were to me. You think like a trapper, not a warrior, she observed. A warrior meets his enemy head-on. You look for the enemy's weakness before the fight even begins. "Where I come from, the fight you avoid is the one you win," I said, pulling a compact scanner from the belt. My whole life has been about avoiding fights, running from debts, from bad deals, and from a past I'd rather not think about. The confession slipped out before I could stop it. It was the bond. It lowered the walls, made honesty feel as natural as breathing. I felt a wave of empathy from her, a quiet understanding that wasn't pity. It was recognition. "I too have been running," she admitted, her voice soft. "Running toward this trial, believing it would solve everything, that proving my strength would honor my bloodline and silence my family's enemies." She looked at her hands. "Strength is not what I thought it was." We used the dead merc's datapad to triangulate the signal from the one who'd fallen. He was alive, and his panic beacon was active. He was their liability, their weakness. A plan began to form, a fusion of her tactical knowledge and my dirty tricks. We would use their wounded man as bait, set a trap. It was a Cathar warrior's strategy, executed with a scavenger's cunning. As we prepared, moving through the glowing canyons, the bond settled between us. It wasn't a distraction anymore. It was a tool. A glance was enough to communicate a complex thought. A shared feeling of danger was more effective than any shouted warning. "To the west ridge, higher ground," I thought, directing the thought at her. I felt her immediate assent, a sense of agreed. I will take the left flank. This was something new, something powerful, something that might just get us out of this alive. The plan was simple, deceptively so. We found the wounded merc, groaning at the bottom of the ravine with a broken leg. We didn't approach him. Instead, I used his comm unit, cranking the signal jammer up to max power so our broadcast was a tight, localized beam he was sure to be monitoring. I held the comm, took a deep breath, and let the lies flow. "Spectre 1, this is Raider. The target is down. I repeat, the Cathar female is down. The stalker got her, my leg is busted, and this whole moon is trying to kill me. I'm at the designated secondary evac point. Get me the hell out of here." I added a pained groan for effect. It was a gamble, but mercs, in my experience, were greedy. The promise of a completed contract, of getting paid, often overrode their caution. We hid ourselves among the rocks overlooking the evac point, a small exposed plateau. Zelia lay prone, her spear tip retracted, using the shaft as a scope to watch the approach. I was beside her, a captured plasma pistol in my hand. It felt heavier than my old one, more real. The silence stretched. The only sound was the wind whistling through the canyons and the low, constant hum of our psychic connection. I could feel her focus, a sharp, deadly point of concentration, and she could feel my nervous energy, the thrumming anxiety that I had learned to channel into heightened awareness. "They are coming," she sent, the thought clean and sharp as glass. "Two of them, from the North Pass, arrogant. They are not scanning for threats." I peered over the edge. She was right. Two figures in black armor were moving at a steady jog, their rifles held at a low ready. They thought they were coming for a simple pickup. The wounded merc below saw them and started waving frantically. "About time, you bastards," he yelled, his voice echoing. The two mercs reached the plateau, their helmets turning to survey the scene. One of them knelt beside his injured comrade. The other remained standing, rifle sweeping the area. He was the professional, the dangerous one. "Let him commit," Celia murmured, her actual voice a soft whisper beside me. I nodded. We waited. The kneeling merc pulled out a med injector. "Stupid bitch thought she could take on a stalker," he grunted. "Saved us the trouble." That was our cue. "Now," Zelia breathed. She didn't rise. She fired the spear from her prone position. Not the energy blast, but the tip itself. A physical projectile. It launched with a pneumatic hiss, a silent, deadly dart. It took the standing merc in the throat, punching through his helmet's gorget. He dropped without a sound. The second merc looked up, his faceplate reflecting a perfect image of his own surprise. Before he could even raise his rifle, I opened fire. My plasma bolts weren't as accurate as her spear, but they didn't need to be. I stitched a line of green fire across his chest, the shots hammering him backward until he collapsed in a heap. It was over in less than 5 seconds. Clean, brutal, efficient. We slid down from our perch, landing softly on the plateau. The wounded merc stared at us, his face pale with terror and disbelief. But You were dead. Zelia stood over him, her shadow falling across his body. She looked down at him, her golden eyes cold and hard. The report of my death was a tactical miscalculation, she said, her voice dripping with ice. She looked at me, then, and the coldness in her eyes softened. A silent question passed between us through the bond. What to do with him? I thought of my past, of the people I'd run from, the corners I'd cut. I'd never been the one holding all the cards before. I met her gaze and sent a clear thought back to her. No more killing. He's our proof, our leverage. She nodded once. A flicker of something, surprise, approval, warmed the bond between us. She looked back at the terrified merc. You will be a message to Elder Kresh, she said. Tell him the huntress of the Cathar is coming home. And she is not coming alone. Standing there, amidst the wreckage of our enemies under the strange violet sky of a world I'd crash-landed on, I didn't feel like a scavenger anymore, and she didn't look like an outcast. We looked like partners. We looked like survivors. We turned together and faced the direction of her city, a distant gleam on the horizon. My ship was a wreck. My old life was a galaxy away. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running. We were walking toward the fire, and we were doing it together. A new trial was about to begin.